Hi, it's your fairy book mama. Today we're going to be reading Chapter 10 of Abe Lincoln Gets His Chance by Frances Kavanaugh. Hurry up and eat your breakfast, Abe, said Tom the next morning. We're going to cut corn for that skinflint, John Carter. Sarah passed her husband a plate of hot cornbread. Why, Tom, it ain't fitting to talk that way about a neighbor, before the children, too. Tom poured a generous helping of sorghum molasses over his bread. I'm an honest man. It's fitting that I call Carter what he is, and he's a skinflint. He's only paying Abe and me 10 cents a day. Other folks pay you 2 bits. I ain't got any other work right now. Carter knows I need all the money I can lay my hands on, the way he beat me down on the price for my south fields. I wish you didn't have to sell. Wishing won't do any good. I need cash money mighty bad. Remember, this farm ain't paid for yet. He got up and walked over to the chest. He picked up the sharp knife he used for cutting corn. Get your knife, Abe, and come along. Abe walked behind his father along the path through the woods. That Mr. Swaney was right nice, he said. Tom grunted. He's waiting to start his school until after harvest, Abe went on. Nat Grigsby's going, Allen Gentry's going, and he's 2 years older than me. Allen's pa's a rich man, said Tom gruffly. Maybe he's got money to burn, but poor folks like us have to earn our keep. But, Pa, I declare your tongue is loose at both ends today. Can't you stop plaguing me? First your ma, then you. You ought to see I'm worried. Abe said nothing more. He pulled a book out of the front of his shirt and began to read as he strode along the path. Tom looked back over his shoulder. Don't let John Carter catch you with that book. I brought it along so I can read while I eat my dinner. I'll put it away before we get to the Carter place. Edication, said Tom in disgust. I never had any, and I get along better'n if I had. Take figuring. If a fella owes me money, I'll take a burnt stick and make a mark on the wall. When he pays me, I take a dish rag and wipe the mark off. That's better than getting all hot and bothered trying to figure. And writing, I can write my name and that's all the writing I need. But the most tomfoolery of all is reading. You don't see me wasting my time reading any books. The path ended at the edge of the woods, and Tom opened the gate into the Carter cornfield. Row after row of tall corn stretched away in even, straight lines. Mr. Carter was waiting. Ready to sign over that south field, Tom? He asked. A lawyer from Rockport is drawing up the papers. He is riding up with them this morning. I'll see you at dinner time. After John Carter had gone back to his cabin, Tom and Abe set to work. Using their sharp knives, they began cutting the corn close to the ground. They stood the tall golden stalks on end, tying them together in neat shocks or bundles. By the time the sun stood directly overhead, several long rows had been cut and stacked, and John Carter was coming toward them across the field. It was noon. Abe laid aside his knife, sat down on the rail fence, and pulled out his book. He took a piece of cornbread wrapped in a corn husk from his pocket. As he ate, he read, paying no attention to the conversation taking place a few feet away. Come and sit down, Tom, said Carter. Tom sat on a tree stump. Carter was being more friendly than usual. He was carrying a gourd full of ink, which he placed on another stump. He set down a deerskin bag, which jingled pleasantly with coins. In one pocket he found a turkey buzzard pen. From another he brought out an official-looking paper. Here's the deed for the south field, he explained. Here's a pen. I'll hold the ink for you. You make your mark here. I don't need to make my mark, said Tom proudly. I know how to sign my name. Then hurry up and do it. Mrs. Carter has dinner ready, and I got to get back to the house. Tom took the paper and looked at it uncertainly. I don't sign any paper till I know what I'm signing. I want time to go over this careful like. He could make out a few words, and that was all. But not for anything would he admit that he could not read it. You told me you wanted to sell, said Carter. I said I would buy. I am keeping my part of the bargain. I even brought the money with me. Tom's face grew red. He looked down at the paper in his hand. He glanced at Abe seated on the fence. A struggle was taking place between pride and common sense. Common sense won. Abe, come here, he called. Abe went on reading. Tom raised his voice. Abe, when I tell you to come, I mean for you to come. The boy looked up from his book with a start. Yes, Pa? Did you want me? Hustle over here and look at this paper. Carter is in a mighty big hurry for me to sign something I ain't had a chance to read. You've had plenty of time to read it, said Carter. But if you don't want to sell, I can call the whole deal off. Abe reached out a long arm and took the paper. He read it slowly. Pa, he asked, Don't James just sell Mr. Carter just the south field? You know I'm selling him just the south field, said Tom. Then don't sign this. Carter picked up the money bag clanking with coins. He tossed it into the air and caught it neatly. Tom looked at it. He wanted that money. He looked at Abe. Why shouldn't I sign? He asked. If you do, you'll be selling Mr. Carter most of your farm. John Carter was furious. Don't try to tell me a country Jake like you can read. That paper says the south field, as plain as the nose on your face. It says that and a sight more, Mr. Carter, Abe drawled. It says the north field, too. It says the east and the west fields. There wouldn't be much farm left for Pa, except the part our cabin is setting on. A dispute between men in Pigeon Creek usually ended in a fight. Tom Lincoln doubled up his fists. Put them up, Carter. The two men rolled over and over in a confused tangle of arms and legs. Now Tom Lincoln was on top. Now it was John Carter. Go it, Pa, Abe shouted from the fence. Don't let that old skinflint get you down. After a few minutes, Carter lay on his back, gasping for breath. "'Nuff!" he cried, and Tom let him scramble to his feet. Carter began brushing himself off. "It ain't fitting to fight a neighbor," he whined, "just because of a mistake." "Mistake nothing," Tom snorted. "Somebody lied and it wasn't Abe." "I'll have a new paper made out if you like," said Carter. Tom looked at him with scorn. "You ain't got enough money to buy my south field, but I'll thank you for the 10 cents you owe us. Abe and I each did half a day's work." Tom's right eye was swelling, and by the time he reached home it was closed. The bump on the side of his head was the size of a hen's egg. There was a long scratch down his cheek. Sarah was kneeling before the fireplace, raking ashes over the potatoes that she had put in to bake. She jumped up in alarm. "What's the matter? What happened?" she asked. "It was like Pa said," Abe told her. "Mr. Carter is a skinflint." Sarah took Tom by the arm and made him sit down on the stool. She touched the swollen eye with gentle fingers. "It don't hurt much," he said. "I reckon Mr. Carter hurts more." Abe spoke up again. "He has 2 black eyes." Tom slapped his thigh and roared with laughter. "He sure does. But if it hadn't been for Abe—" He stopped, embarrassed. Sarah was soaking a cloth in a basin of cold water. She laid it on his eye. "What started it all?" "You tell them, Abe," said Tom. "That Mr. Carter ain't as smart as he thinks he is," Abe explained. "He had a paper for Pa to sign and try to make out it was for just the south fields. And do you know what, Mama? When Pa asked me to read it, why, it was for almost our whole farm." "You don't mean to tell me?" said Sarah. "Carter said he'd have a new paper made out, but I told him," Tom added with a touch of pride, "I could do without his money." "Good for you," Sarah said, beaming. "Don't you fret. We'll squeak through somehow. But what if you had signed that paper? The farm would have been sold right out from under us. I reckon we can feel mighty proud of Abe." "Well," Tom admitted, "it didn't hurt that he knew how to read. When did you say Mr. Swaney aims to start his school?" "Right after the harvest," said Abe before his stepmother had a chance to answer. Tom ignored him and went on talking to his wife. "Now, mind you, Sary, I ain't saying Abe needs any more education. I ain't saying it is fitting a son should know more'n's Pa. But if you think the young ones should go to this new school for a spell, I won't say no." He rose and stalked out of the cabin. Then he came back and stuck his head in at the door. "Mind you, Abe, you forget to do your chores just one time, and that schoolmaster won't be seeing you again." "Come back and sit down, Tom," said Sarah. "Supper is nearly ready. Besides, Abe has something that needs saying." Abe looked at his stepmother in surprise. Then he looked at his father. "I'm much obliged, Pa," he said. Thanks for listening. Hope you're enjoying this story as much as I am. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. And hit the notification bell for notifications for when I post a new video. If you're going to bed, sweet dreams. If not, have a wonderful day. Thanks for listening and can't wait to see you soon. Bye.